All right, we're here with Keith outside City Hall. So Keith, why have you been coming here to City Hall? What message have you been trying to share with the city?
I was made homeless by a child molester who comes from a family of cops, and his name is Ian Andrew Gilderson. And this happened in October of 2012. And him and his wife made up a story that I pushed his wife across the room. And his wife works for PERS, the Police Retirement Pension Fund, and the Public Employees Retirement System or whatever. But
is this a roommate situation?
Yeah, I was renting a room from them, and then I found out from their former roommate who this guy Ian Andrew Gilderson actually assaulted and went to jail for, and illegally evicted him before he illegally evicted me later. I was the guy who had the unfortunate reality of moving into the wrong roommate situation. Then I found out from his former roommate that his former roommate caught him watching porn with his 11-year-old stepdaughter, who he recently had moved into. And he rented a room, I guess, off of Craigslist or somewhere, met this girl, and then, you know, within 11 months or so, he married her. But he made jokes like, this one time, he's all like, "I got a confession to make to you, honey. I actually married you because I'm in love with your daughter." And this is after he was accused by his former roommate of being a child molester. And then the city council and the mayor are blacking out my testimony when I'm naming his name. And it's definitely probably a result of me going on Heart Attack Radio by Hart Fisher's show. And it's episode 52. And I'll actually probably be going on his show again this next week. But yeah, they basically, after I appeared on that show, they blacked out my testimony where I'm naming Ian Andrew Gilderson and his wife Christy. They went back and deleted the audio and blacked out the transcript, which you have in your video that you posted.
They muted
right?
her name too?
Yeah.
Christy Gilderson.
Yeah.
And she works currently for the city of Portland?
Yeah, she works for PERS, the Police Retirement Fund, and the Public Employees Retirement System. But yeah, so basically, you know, I'm just wondering why these guys are trying to cover up for this guy. And you saw the mayor in his testimony, how he's all like, "Hey, stop talking about this guy. You know, you're libeling him or whatever." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. He's a child molester. He's doing 25 years in prison." And then when I'm still trying to name his name, he's like, "Hey, stop naming this guy's name," you know? So
and for those watching, we'll have the links to the mugshot and the charges down below. So where's the link with this other potential relative in Washington County, the Washington County deputy?
He's got a uncle who's a sheriff deputy out in Washington County, and he's actually the reason that guy...
Is that Christopher Gilderson?
I'm not sure the guy's name, actually. I haven't checked into it myself. I just know that he has a relative out there, and that's actually the reason he moved to Portland originally, was because his uncle invited him or said, "Hey, it's a cool city," or whatever. He's from Wisconsin, and then he moved out here, you know,
So you met him through Craigslist, started renting a room, started
I met him through his former roommate, who was actually a former roommate of mine before, and then he went and moved into Ian's house, and he was basically living there for a while. Then he found out the guy's a sicko, and then you know, he told some different people around that he caught him watching porn with his 11-year-old daughter. And then basically after that, Ian assaulted him, and you can, you know, I sent you a link to those assault charges too that occurred, like, you know, what was that, in August or something of 2012. So, and then, you know, I got illegally evicted in October. So, you know, he's just illegally evicting people, assaulting them, getting off on the charges, and then, you know, finally he gets busted 11 months later in September of 2013 for all these charges. I actually called the police like over 20 or 30 times saying that they needed to go investigate this guy. I called CPS on him multiple times. They did some little, you know, surface cleaning investigation, probably asked the girl, hey, is he doing stuff to you or whatever, but that seems about all that went on, you know what I mean? And I don't think the police even actually investigated it at all, but I know CPS did. But I was threatened by the police, you know, to stop making calls to the police department talking about how he's a child molester and he needs to be investigated and stuff. And they basically told me they were going to charge me with harassment if I keep calling there. And I told them, I'm not harassing you. I'm actually trying to get different questions out of you that you are refusing to answer. So I'm not harassing you. And I would have, you know, if I didn't have my little dog here, you know, I would just have just been like, well, I'm going to keep calling back until you answer my questions, or you can charge me with harassment or whatever, then we'll go in front of a judge and we'll work it out that way. Because, you know, telephone harassment on the level, they could have recorded everything, and you can clearly, they probably already have all the conversations recorded already, I would assume. And I actually have some of the conversations recorded myself on a mini DV format, and I could, you know, give you some of that stuff.
Who were you talking to? Just someone that answers the phones, or were you getting up to someone high up?
I was talking to a lieutenant, I forget his... I was talking to different sergeants and lieutenants. I got,
You're transferred probably a couple times?
Yeah, I talked to a couple different guys. I have some of their names down. Let me see. Pretty sure I got.
So in that April 16th, 2014 testimony that you previously gave, that is available on the City of Portland website, where they post the videos of AM session and PM session. I did upload that to YouTube. It's one of the last videos. And they did mute out that name, Ian Anderson Gilderson, and you say you mentioned Christy Gilderson. And some people might be, well, wait a minute, maybe they're trying to protect the innocent. But like you said, and we have the links down below, he was already arrested. He's already, is he in prison now? Has he already been convicted?
He took a 25-year plea bargain, so he's not going to see the light of day unless he wins an appeal or some crap like that, which, you know.
So we live in a world where sex offenders, even if someone's been charged with committing a sex crime, even if they urinate in public, people have to go knock on the neighbor's door and say that their anonymity isn't protected. There are lists that show where they are. So that's the question. I'm wondering, why would they protect this particular individual? Unless maybe there are links.
Especially since he's already convicted, you know? Like, they might as well just throw him under the fucking bus and get rid of his ass, you know what I mean?
Now, we don't know if there's a connection, but we're definitely suspicious. It's ironic that Portland is like a #1 child sex trafficking hub. And you mentioned that also in your testimony, that isn't it ironic that this is a city where that's going on? Yeah, tell us more about some of the stuff that you do know about
basically,
that world of part of Portland.
I've talked to a lot of police, and they don't want to go around harassing homeless people, a lot of them, you know. I mean, there's probably some of them that actually get a kick out of that and like harassing homeless people, but there's actually a lot of police that don't want to screw with the homeless, that would rather be fucking, you know, going after sickos and child molesters and all this child sex trafficking. And, you know, the mayor repeatedly denies the police an actual real budget to fight against that stuff. And then, you know, he's awarding $12 million contracts to like G4S security to move out the homeless people, and you know, and then he can't even come up with a measly little bit of money to fight against child sex trafficking, you know. So, and basically, if you go to the Center of Disease Control website and you put in the ACE study, you'll find that the majority of homeless people were abused as children and different stuff like that. So Mayor Hale's almost has no problem victimizing the victims and, you know, saying like, oh, this isn't about homelessness, this is about lawlessness and stuff, you know? Well, you know, one of the worst crimes you can possibly commit is child molestation, and these guys are not giving the budget to the police to actually fight against this stuff, and then they basically have plenty of money to war against the homeless, but no money to, you know, fight against child sex trafficking, and that's totally ridiculous, you know?
Yeah, you sent me that link to that 2004 Willamette Week story, Broken Halo.
Yeah.
Featuring
the guy who ran the Baloney Joe's homeless shelter for kids, and then he gave a bunch of them gonorrhea of the throat, and that was covered in the Willamette Week, and
this was going on in the 80s, and then he got promoted to run an NGO.
This was actually in the 90s,
okay.
And then he's the head of the National Coalition for the Homeless in Washington D.C. So this is a guy who got, you know, gave a bunch of kids gonorrhea of the throat.
Michael Stoops.
Yeah, Michael Stoops, and now he's the head of the National Coalition for the Homeless in Washington D.C. So you see how these pedophiles just move up the ladder, and you know, and they embed themselves in these various city agencies and homeless help things and all kinds of places, so they can, you know. There was a philanthropist dude recently who is from Happy Valley, Oregon, and he gave, I think, like over $200,000 a year to various charities. One of the charities he gave the most to was a program to help foster youth kids, you know, and that's probably so he could go to the awards, benefits, and stuff like that, and be all like, yeah, thanks to this guy, you know, here's a few kids. Hey, do you want to have a barbecue over at this guy's house? You know, he's a cool guy. He's helping out foster youth kids and stuff, you know. And so there's a lot of stuff like that, you know.
Well, what else do you want to share? What else should people look up?
There was 5,200 downloads of child pornography by members of the Pentagon, from the NSA, the CIA, the Department of Defense, and these are people with the nuclear launch codes. And, you know, Portland actually has a real history of child pornography and stuff too, and dating back to the Franklin cover-up, where Lawrence King, was flying kids from Omaha, Nebraska, from the Catholic charity organization to have sex with politicians in D.C. That guy Russell Nelson, is actually listed as one of the top 200 sexual predators in Portland here, and he got busted for a bunch of child pornography. And so that just shows that people that have a long history of child pornography just come to this town and make it their home, and they seem to get along pretty good for the most part, you know. And then there's this one guy, Michael Joseph Flory, Flory, and I have a video of me confronting him at Rite Aid and calling him a child molester and stuff. He was convicted. You can just look up his name and put the Balloon Man, and you'll find articles about him and how he raped a 14-year-old kid in California, and then he came up here, raped this street kid, and, you know, I'm sure he's raped a bunch of others that he didn't get busted for. But I actually have met his victim, and his victim was not notified by the state when he got out, too, you know. But then I go and confront him in front of Rite Aid, and all I did was verbally abuse him, right? I didn't threaten him with violence. I didn't do anything like that. And then I had Homeland Security stop me, and the police, two Homeland Security guys were there, and then 2 police, because of me harassing a child molester. And then you had these clean and safe guys that were, you know, there was a couple street guys there, and you know, they were junkies or whatever, you know, and basically this guy was saying, like, from Clean and Safe, he's saying, get your doper buddies out of here, you know? And I was like, these guys aren't my buddies, you know? And basically the guy was saying, like, you know, well, you know, you're harassing this guy and blah, blah, blah. And the guys were saying that they'd rather drink a beer with a child molester than someone who's on the methadone program. So you have Clean and Safe people and members of the little security forces around here that would rather drink a beer with a child molester than with someone who's on the methadone program, which is a medical sanctioned way to withdraw from heroin. So, you know, these guys would rather hang out with child molesters, and they admit it, and I have that on video too, you know? I have these guys, and actually one of those guys tried to attack me and assault me when I was filming this too, you know? One of these security agent dudes around here. He's probably down like, we could probably walk down to Rite Aid right now, and this guy, the Balloon Man, he'd be probably sitting there right now selling Street Roots newspaper. And I've talked to a bunch of people because I have showed his picture around, and a bunch of people I know have said that he's made unwanted advances and tried to hug people's girlfriends. So he's like trying to grope all these women, right? And he's a registered sex offender, and he's got 10 years of probation, but he's outside of Rite Aid groping women and stuff like that, you know? And then, you know, I actually asked this one cop, I said, hey, this guy's a sex offender out in front of Rite Aid. Can you go down there and run his name and make sure his papers are all up to date, you know? Nope. He's too busy screwing off and doesn't want to go deal with it, you know? But
yeah, I think a lot of people don't want to deal with it. I mean, as we've been talking here the last 17 minutes, there's been a few families that have gone by, and I've heard felt a few women stop, listen for a minute, and just keep walking. I notice that society is curious about these things, but when they face how dark it really could be, they just keep walking. Do you see that spirit of apathy here in Portland in regards to sex trafficking?
Oh, yeah. It's kind of like I consider Portland, like a lot of the members of this city, to be basically like almost like cult members. They have like this cult-like devotion to Portland, you know? You can talk crap about any city in the world or any various issue, but once you start touching on local issues, people of Portland don't want to hear it.
I noticed that.
Yeah, they're like...
I lost a lot of friends by being aware of things locally, where like they would prefer to look at DC or London or the Vatican. Yeah. But there are things at home that we need to look at.
Yeah, they're just like, they don't want to talk about anything locally, you know? It's kind of scary, actually, you know? It's like a Jim Jones type fucking mentality, like, you know?
So what would you recommend people do if they want to get involved in helping spread the message, holding their local officials accountable, whether it be in Portland here watching this or somewhere else?
I think that actually a lot of people just need to run their own personal investigations, and, you know, they could do a lot of stuff like Dateline to catch a predator themselves, you know?
Right.
They could actually run investigations and probably work with some local private investigators, and
they can bypass the local media and break their own stories.
And you can actually get all kinds of books on how to become a private investigator, and actually that guy Ed Opperman has a book about how to become a private investigator. So you can pretty much do a lot of private investigations and stuff, you know, because obviously once you get down into reality yourself, you know, you can see a lot more and be a casual observer. You can go to, you know, various places like shopping malls and see pimps trying to recruit little girls and stuff like that. You can do all kinds of stuff, you know, create fake identities online and lure these predators in, and then bring the evidence to the police or wherever it needs to go to, you know, the FBI, the police, whatever. As far as all these sexual predators and child molesters, you know, I'm not a big advocate of dealing with the police and the FBI or anything, but You know, stuff like this, I have no problem throwing a child molester under a bus and feeding them to a lion or the police or whatever, you know what I mean? So that's pretty much my take on things, you know?
Thanks, Keith.
Right on.